Hello, and welcome to RealityHacker, powered by ohmTown.com. Today is June 15th, 2024. It's Season 1, Episode 24. Today we're going to be talking about robotic pets, robots in the driver's seat, GPS of your innards, DNA and amber like Polymer, deep brain stimulation, AI magic robotic suits, fully edible robots, VR treatment for psychosis, hide your face, and Trackcraft goes fully VR. That and maybe a little snark, I don't know. It really depends on how the stream goes, but everything is powered by ohmTown. Once again, hello, I am Merwat. I run ohmTown, the sentient AI from the future that powers the little neurons that are flowing around me. Is not available again. They are on location doing some work. That means that I'm flying solo for the rest of the night. Perhaps it depends on if they can break away. But we have 10 articles like usual. We talk about certain things for each of the shows. ohmTown Daily News Show, though, is a holistic show that covers everything that gets aggregated into ohmTown.com. 6 main categories, and then there are going to be, right now there's only 47, but there's going to be 50 channels within it, all with a niche concept for the show. This one is RealityHacker, and we talk about computer graphics, virtual reality, mixed reality, artificial intelligence, deep fakes, etc. But tech-based primarily, but also because of what I do as mayor and outside of my mayoral duties. I talk about science, technology, and society, the merging, the crossroads of which are ohmTown. So go over to ohmTown.com, become a citizen, and then you can do things like submit news to us and hide articles that you're not interested in, save articles that you're interested in, and even chat in the discussion boards that are created under each headline. And I'll show you how that works. So the first article for today is right here in ohmTown Daily. It is one of the many channels. So like I said earlier, there's going to be 50, but there's 47 right now. There's an agency that's going to distribute more than 4,000 robotic pets among seniors to combat loneliness. The New York State Office for Aging announced this month that it'll distribute 4,725 additional robotic pets among seniors in ongoing efforts to combat loneliness. The article was written by Dr. I think their pronunciation is Sejal Parekh. And the article is at abcnews.go.com. The deck statement says the robotic pets will be distributed by the New York State Office for Aging. And as much as I think that it's cute, I think it's kind of sad too. Helen Makura has always wanted a dog, but the Prohibition era home she has lived in since 1945 isn't safe for a potential pet, which I think is astonishing. Safe for her, but not for a potential pet. Her childhood dream of owning a dog finally came true a couple of years ago when Helen was in her late 90s. Today at 101, Helen says she's grateful for her robotic dog that she affectionately named Friendly. It's one of 31,500 robotic pets already given away by the New York State Office for Aging, the NY SOFA. The pup barks, turns his head, raises his paw. More importantly, he does not run out the door into busy streets. So here's a picture of, they don't really have the name, but a person holding a pet cat that's robotic. Ted Fisher originally envisioned robotic pets for seniors while working at a children's toy company. The product was intended for school-aged children, but about 20% of the reviews were not mom buying it for their 4 to 8-year-old daughter, but buying it for an aging loved one. So, boom, you end up with NYSOFA that has purchased subsidized robotic pets for seniors from Ageless Innovation using state general funds. Pets include not only robotic cats and dogs, but also birds, affectionately termed walker squawkers. The pets have been popular, and certain counties have even had to create waiting lists for seniors who want the pets, which I think is pretty cool. Anybody that's interested in tech, I think it helps people, motivates people, gets them engaged. They say here the mortality impact of being socially disconnected is somewhat to that, caused by smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. The advisory states a reference to Holt Lundsted's work. Dr. Julianne Holt Lundstead, a professor of psychology and neuroscience at Brigham Young University, has researched the health effects of loneliness for the past 25 years. Her research is cited in Surgeon General Vivek Murthy's 2023 declaration of an epidemic of loneliness and isolation, probably part and parcel to the fact that society has moved mostly online, and we don't bump up against each other unless we're out and about touching grass for those crucial moments where we have to go out in public. Holt Lundstead said that loneliness is a biological motive like hunger and thirst. Loneliness signals some kind of change that needs to be made, she said. Yeah, I think that humans require other people. And I know that there's a lot of people that will argue with me because I've had these conversations. The desire to be alone is usually a small segment of somebody's existence. They may be peaceful being alone, but at some point we've craved being around other people. Only in today's modern society do we seem to be able to kind of short circuit that motivation by being online and building communities around it. And we're all pretty content with it. Well, a lot of us are pretty content with that. So let's go on to the next article. It's an interesting article. And to find out all of the articles that we have today, you can actually hit !ODNS for the ohmTown Daily News Show, or in this particular case, it's RH. So !RH will pull up RealityHacker and all of the articles for today's show. ohmTown seems to be a little drunk. I wasn't able to fix the problem with its desire to just post the links haphazardly, I guess, between the titles. I can fix it, but it takes a little bit more work. But at any rate, you can get all of the links, and they are right there. If you want to download the podcast when it is ready, you can hit !pod, and that will give you the links to the podcasts. And if you want to get all of the commands for all of the shows that we're going to have this weekend, only today's shows are already set up for it. Last week's Sunday's shows, the plural, there was 4 of them on Saturday and 4 of them on Sunday. Those haven't been updated yet, but you can type in ! and then show notes, and that will give you the commands that are necessary to pull up a given show's show notes. Ta-da! It's kind of in the name. So let's go on to the next article. Our next one is over in Technology Today. Researchers wonder, what if you just put a robot in the driver's seat instead of automating the car? A team of roboticists at the University of Tokyo have taken a new approach to autonomous driving. Instead of automating the entire car, simply put a robot in the driver's seat. The group built a robot capable of driving a car and tested it on a real-world track. They also published a paper describing their efforts on the archive preprint server. This article is over at techexplore.com. It's written by Bob Yurka from Tech Explorer itself. And it has this kind of tiny little car. There's a certain classification for these. I can't remember what they are. These wouldn't be allowed on US roads. They're like Kai cars, and Kai cars are largely not allowed on roads. They don't qualify because they don't go through the same protections and stuff. But this is a neat paper to do the experiment on to see if it's possible. Virtually all efforts to build a self-driving car have focused on making the car itself autonomous. Humans sit in the passenger seat or in the back. These efforts involve adding a host of sensors in addition to processing power. but they've been met with mixed results. So why not create something that can steer a car like a human and observe the world like a robot? So much more advanced visual acuity because it can see everything everywhere all at once. Or maybe this way it can see just like a human, but I don't know if I want a computer acting like a human, because there's thousands upon thousands of vehicular accidents taking place each year. But in this new effort, the research team wondered if it might not be easier and cheaper simply to build a robot that can be taught how to drive a car and put it in the driver's seat of a normal vehicle. And to find that out, they built such a robot and tested it on a track at the University of Tokyo's Kashiwa campus. The robot was named Musashi, and it was designed to operate in much the same way as a human car driver. So they describe it as musculoskeletal humanoid, a robot with 2 arms and 2 legs, with feet and hands, a torso, neck, and head. So it could drive around and see what you see as a human, but from the perspective of technical sophistication. Maybe it can learn how to drive like a human, and then you don't have to build out the entirety of the car with sensors, which would change really the production process. The robot apparently just drives around, grabs onto the steering wheel, and the jointed arms have hands with 5 digits, feet have grippiness to ensure precise control of the gas pedal and brake. Team reports the initial testing was encouraging, though they acknowledge that Musashi has a long wait of being ready to drive on a public road. There's Musashi. Ta-da! Pretty cool. I don't know, this reminds me of Total Recall with the pedicab. And it's not a pedicab. What do they call it? I can't remember the name of the cab now, but it had like a humanoid head sitting in there in the driver's seat, but still was driving the car like a human. It acted and looked like a human. Not really. I mean, it looked like a robot, but Uncanny Valley is definitely where it came from. Let's keep going. The next article is over in Technology Today. From wearables to swallowables, engineers create GPS-like smart pills with AI. Imagine finding your location without GPS. Now apply this to tracking an item in the body. This has been the challenge with tracking smart pills equipped with smart sensors once swallowed. At the USC Viterbi School of Engineering, innovations in wearable electronics and AI have led to the development of ingestible sensors that not only detect stomach gases, but also provide real-time location tracking, so it knows exactly where it is in your body. So it's tracking your innards. University of Southern California is the source of this article. Developed by ConLab, these capsules are tailored to identify gases associated with gastritis and gastric cancers. The research, to be published in Cell Reports Physical Science, shows how these smart pills have been accurately monitored through a newly designed wearable system. The breakthrough represents a significant step in ingestible technology, which Yasser Khan, an assistant professor of electrical and computer engineering at USC, believes could someday serve as a Fitbit for the gut and for early disease detection. So you're going to have to track this thing down eventually. So it goes in one way. It doesn't come out a side door. It comes out the back door. Anyway, let's see. The field, coupled with trained neural network, allows the team to locate the capsule within the body, according to Anza Abdeghazi, lead author of the work and a PhD student in the Khan lab. This has not been demonstrated with a wearable before. The second innovation within the device is the newly created sensing material. Capsules are outfitted not just with electronics for tracking, but with optical sensing membrane that is selective to gas. This membrane is comprised of materials whose electrons change their behavior within the presence of ammonia gas. So ammonia is a component of H. pylori, gut bacteria that, when elevated, can be a sign of peptic ulcer, gastric cancer, or irritable bowel syndrome. Thus, says Khan, the presence of this gas is a proxy and can be used as an early disease detection system. So there you go. Swallow this pill and we'll track your gut. I have seen other technologies over the years, and they've used magnets to control things, and there have been pills that are sensors that you can swallow in the past. So I'm not quite sure exactly what it is that's being referred to, that it hasn't been done before. Maybe the tracking aspect of it, but I'd have to look. I think I've seen that before too. Let's keep going though. We still have 7 more articles, including this one. The next article is over in the Marble channel. Scientists preserve DNA in amber-like polymer. They say a method could be used for long-term storage of genomes or digital data. In the movie Jurassic Park, scientists extracted DNA that had been preserved in amber for millions of years and used it to create a population of long-extinct dinosaurs. I don't know, I've never really looked into it, but I don't know how realistic that would be, because even if it is encapsulated in amber, it still has a biological process that would break it down. And cells go through apoptosis no matter what, unless it's a cancer cell, and then they would be building something that's burdened by cancer if they were to clone it. Anyway, Ann Trafton, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, put the article together. It's posted at phys.org. So, inspired partly by that film, MIT researchers have developed a glassy amber-like polymer that can be used for long-term storage of DNA, whether entire human genomes or digital files such as photos. Most current methods of storing DNA require freezing temperatures, so they consume a great amount of energy, and not feasible in many parts of the world. In contrast, the new amber-like polymer can store DNA at room temperature while protecting the molecules from damage caused by heat or water. But what about their own processes? I don't know. They demonstrated that the DNA can be easily removed from the polymer without damaging it. Freezing DNA is the #1 way to preserve it, but it's expensive and not scalable, says James Banal, a former MIT postdoc. They talk about capturing DNA, a very stable molecule, is well suited for storing massive amounts of information, including digital DNA. We've talked about that throughout the years. Well, we've been around for 2.5 years now. And we've talked about DNA and even digital storage systems using DNA. There have been things where, or I should say, there have been experiments and methods of hacking and stuff like that where you can use, in theory, blood to store encrypted code, encrypted message in the ATGC of our genes, and then inject us with it so that we're couriers of the information. It's quite fascinating. So DNA offers a way to store this digital information in very high density. In theory, a coffee mug full of DNA, sounds gross, could store all of the world's data. Probably less than a coffee mug could store all of the world's data. DNA is also very stable and relatively easy to synthesize and sequence. True. The work that they did led to a spin-out called cache DNA. One downside to the storage system is that it takes several days to embed DNA into the silica particles. Oh, okay. So it's not actually biological. Furthermore, removing the DNA from the particles requires hydrofluoric acid, which can be hazardous to workers handling the DNA. Gotcha. Yeah, this doesn't sound like a biological process. It sounds... I'd have to look more into this because it doesn't really say. For the project, the researchers decided to make their thermoset polymer from styrene and a crosslinker, which together form an amber-like thermoset called cross-linked polystyrene. Really? This thermoset is also very hydrophobic, so it can prevent moisture from getting in and damaging the DNA. To make the most thermoset degradable, the styrene monomers and crosslinkers are copolymerized with monomers called thionolactones. These links can be broken by treating them with cysteamine. So, all right. let's see. Yeah, when heated the solution becomes a solid glass-like block embedded with DNA complexes. Interesting. Okay. Using the polymers, the researchers showed that they could encapsulate DNA of varying length from tens of nucleotides up to an entire human genome, more than 50,000 base pairs. They were able to store DNA encoding, the Emancipation Proclamation, and the MIT logo, in addition to the theme music from Jurassic Park. This is interesting. I'd love to see how this actually was conducted. So I'm going to end up going down the rabbit hole looking for this information, because I can't believe that they're storing something biological in something that is not without the biological aspects of it degrading at some point in time. But we'll see. I'll look around, and then maybe in tomorrow's Technology Today, that show is a deeper dive. It's this kind of a dive into technology. So, but Reality Hacker is all about kind of the surreal aspects of science, technology, and society, where something like this could lead to storing something that might go extinct, or a person, and storing their DNA so that it is a viable solution for building a clone later when the technology becomes viable to build clones or something else, just so that we don't lose the entire genome of everything, because that's what happens as time goes on. Things become extinct, and we could save that from extinction by storing the DNA in something like this and then going back and cloning it later. But let's keep going. The next article is over in ohmTown Daily. Oklahoma girl becomes first child to undergo robotic deep brain stimulation. Carly Fry, who's only 8, became the first pediatric patient in the world to undergo robotic deep brain stimulation to treat a neurological condition. And the article is by Mary Kakatos over at abcnews.go.com. And let's see here. It says the patient, 8-year-old Carly Fry, suffers from rapid onset primary dystonia, a neurological movement disorder that causes involuntary muscle contractions. The condition initially left her paralyzed, unable to walk, eat, or sit up on her own. She was put on several medication, which improved her condition slightly. But a team at Oklahoma Children's Hospital, OU Health, and Bethany Children's Health Center began exploring options and decided she might be a good candidate for deep brain stimulation. And then it says here in the article that it marked the global debut of using a robot from our operating room to perform DBS in a child, setting a precedent not only in Oklahoma but across the United States and worldwide. That's a quote from Dr. Andrew J., a pediatric neurosurgeon at Oklahoma Children's Hospital. That was said in a press release. So DBS works by interrupting the irregular signals that causes tremors or other involuntary movements. It does not cure the condition, but it can improve a patient's quality of life. Using a robot to perform the procedure enhances surgical precision and safety. So it was like trying to decide if we thought that the surgery would be worth the risk, but I think anything to give her best shot, Carly's mother, Tricia Fry, said in an interview. There were 2 separate parts, according to the mother. The surgery was performed at Oklahoma Children's Hospital, and Carly was transferred to Bethany Children's Health Center for post-operative care and pediatric rehabilitation. So, within a few minutes of the neurostimulator being activated, OU Health said Carly was able to lower and relax her arms, which she couldn't do prior to the procedure. She's able to exhibit more control over her movements, and her speech is also improving. So they basically put electrodes in and a neurostimulator. It's a little pack, and it allows for or disrupts the electrical firings so that she has control over her body again, instead of just her brain firing in a pattern. There is some research that's being done to use artificial intelligence to detect this kind of process where people are not able to control their muscles and other synaptic firings. And so this I totally see as a medical improvement. The only thing that I always have a problem with is that at some point, advancing technology is going to outstrip the functionality of this DBS solution. And then hopefully they can replace what's there. But what I've seen historically is that that's not what happens. It's very expensive, or it's too invasive, or the technology has changed to the point where they can't do it. And so this long-term viability is what's really important to me as well. So hopefully this lasts for a considerable amount of time and actually improves their life. Let's keep going. The next article is over in Technology Today as well. AI Magic, robotic suits that help you run easier and faster. A new training method for robotic exoskeletons using AI and simulations has been shown to decrease energy expenditure in walking, running, and climbing stairs. The article is over at scitechdaily.com. So pretty soon you'll be able to wear an exoskeleton power suit. So you're going to be like Fallout 76, be able to wear power armor. North Carolina State University put this article together. I've actually seen different versions of this kind of a exosuit. The caption under the picture here says, "In testing with human subjects, the researchers found that study participants used 24.3% less metabolic energy when walking in the robotic exoskeleton than without the exoskeleton. And participants used 13.1% less energy when running in the exoskeletons and 15.4% less energy when climbing stairs." I think that's the purpose of climbing stairs and running and just walking around. You probably shouldn't use a power suit. Otherwise, you'll end up having to use a power suit because you can't carry your own weight. Some people, though, should be using it so that it enables them to do things like walk upstairs. So they talk about enhancing locomotive performance, energy efficiency through robotics, future applications. Our framework may offer a generalizable, scalable strategy for the rapid development and widespread adoption of various varieties of assistive robots for both able-bodied and mobility impaired individuals. Power armor, or I should say robotic suits, like they're calling it, I think are great also in fields where you need to carry a lot of weight. And instead of it all relying on your muscles, which could exceed your muscular system, you could tear a muscle really quick lifting up 100 pounds and you're doing it wrong. Whereas with this thing and other affiliated technology, you could carry stuff indefinitely. So I'm all for that, particularly in hazardous workplaces. Ultimately, it says that we're in the early stages of testing the new methods, performance, and robotic exoskeletons being used by older adults and people with neurological conditions such as cerebral palsy. And we are also interested in exploring how the method could improve the performance of robotic prosthetic devices for amputee populations. And I think that hopefully we'll get to the point where we don't have the same mechanisms for amputees right now, where you just have the end of the limb and then there are muscle-based actuators or some other subordinate part of your body used to activate the function of a prosthetic limb. That's where we are now with it. I want more cyberpunk style complete infusion of the technology, but that'll come in time, obviously. I've been dreaming about that for 30 plus years. So power armor is on the way, folks. The next article is over in Technology Today. A fully edible robot could soon end up on your plate, say scientists. It says on our plate, but I don't know about my plate, but it could end up on your plate. A fully edible robot could soon end up on our plate if we overcome some technical hurdles, say EPFL scientists involved in RoboFood, a project that aims to marry robots and food. I'm going to say robots and food quite a bit in this article, apparently. The article was written by Emiliano Farrison from the EPFL. And they have a diagram of what looks like a lobster or a crayfish. Actually, it looks more like a crayfish. Let's say it's a crayfish. But anyway, and they refer to various parts of this animal in technical terms like fluidic circuit and light sensors, and electronic circuits and electrofluidic transducers, tilt sensors, scaffolds. But they're made out of things that you as a human can consume. Not quite sure why, but hey, why not? Robots and food have long been distant worlds. Robots are inorganic, bulky, non-disposable. Food is organic, soft, biodegradable, yet research that develops edible robots has progressed recently and promises positive impacts. The thing that I thought about with this was the doozers from Fraggle Rock, making things out of radish. And that's actually what this is similar to. Quote, "We are still figuring out which edible materials work similarly to non-edible ones," says Floriano, and they're one of the researchers. For example, gelatin can replace rubber. Rice cookies are akin to foam. A chocolate film can protect robots in humid environments, and mixing starch and tannin can mimic commercial glues. And they have a historical rundown of other articles, other researchers. EPFL scientists in 2017 produced something that was made from gelatin, could handle an apple and then be eaten afterward. Basically a fully edible gripper. Sure. They used a conductive ink that can be sprayed on food to sense its growth. The ink contains activated carbon as a conductor, while Haribo gummy bears are used as a binder. Other sensors can perceive pH, light, and bending. At one point, they used to create a battery, a first rechargeable edible battery using riboflavin, B12, and quercetin, found in almonds and capers in the battery poles, adding activated carbon to facilitate electron transport, and nori algae used to wrap sushi to prevent short circuits. All of it was packaged in beeswax, 4 centimeters wide edible battery that can operate at 6.5 volts. 2 of them could power an LED for 10 minutes. You can't eat the LED, at least not yet. Probably cause some problems later on. Anyway, the biggest technical challenge is putting together the parts that use electricity to function, like batteries and sensors, with those that use fluids and pressure to move, like actuators, says Kwok, one of the researchers. After integrating all the components, scientists need to miniaturize them, increase the shelf life of the robotic food, and give robots a pleasant taste. But why? Why would you do that? They asked if they could. They didn't ask if they should. The next article is over in ohmTown Daily. Virtual reality could unlock better treatment for psychosis, a use case that's gaining traction globally. Some researchers are advocating the benefits of VR therapy for psychosis treatments. A clinical trial showed VR therapy reduced anxiety and agoraphobia in people with psychosis. The article is part of a Build It series about digital tech trends disrupting industries. But it's over at Business Insider. Jake Hall is the author. And so I've noodled around in this. I've done research in using virtual reality to treat phobias, pain management, what was referred at the time as hypereducation or subliminal messaging education. Learning by removing all other elements of distraction, except within VR in particular. Or treating phobias within the VR space based on biofeedback. So they say psychosis is not a mental illness, but a symptom that appears as part of different mental illnesses. The Myth-Busting Guide to Psychosis, out later this month by Kai Conaber. The mental illnesses include, but are not limited to, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Anywhere from 15 to 100 people out of 100,000 people develop psychosis annually, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, or for Mental Health. Conaber pointed out the widespread perception that people with psychosis are inherently violent, and it's not necessarily true. In reality, most people who are psychotic are extremely vulnerable. You're more likely to hide away and isolate themselves than be out on the street running around and making noise, but that's what draws media attention, right? So you don't hear about everybody that is just more avoidance than anything else. You hear about the people that have broken free of any controls and limitations that have been produced by their processing of the reality they're dealing with. So they're out in the streets just acting out. For the most part, nobody knows that they're acting out. They're just acting out in the perception of the rest of society. So you have to develop a form of treatment to figure out what is going on, how it's being manifest, why it's being manifest. And when I was doing this stuff using VR, we were using, or I should say I was using, biofeedback, galvanic skin response, pupil dilation, breathing, heart rate, EEG, EKG. Essentially, if you were afraid of something, your body would respond, and then you could interact in the VR space in real time. So if you were afraid of spiders, you could have a spider sitting on a table and it would stay there and be small. But if you became more confident of it, then it could walk closer to you and get bigger. Same thing with fire, water, heights, pretty much everything. And along with having what they talk about here, Freeman's trial specifically focused on people suffering extreme agoraphobic avoidance as a result of psychosis. The treatment is a kind of exposure therapy in which a virtual therapist guides users through stressful scenarios to help alleviate their fears and regulate their thoughts. The study found that participants who used the Game Change software experienced significantly less distress and avoidance, reporting that they felt less threatened in their environments. Why? Because they were more confident about their environment. They were in control of the environment. They felt safe in that environment. It's all of the other extraneous stuff, outside influences that can cause things like a PTSD response to provoke one into reality. The more severely anxious patients experience the greatest benefits, researchers said. These results were deemed so successful that last year the UK's National Health Service approved Game Change as a treatment option. When I did this, it was 30 years ago. And the technology was way too unwieldy to facilitate anything. And so because this wasn't within an academic environment, I never pursued it. I never wrote papers about it. It was more for my edification and to see if something could be done using the technology. I did other stuff researching fMRI technology as a polygraph, and that stuff is coming into existence now, but I got into tech instead of medicine. So I'm glad that there are other people out there that actually ran with it. Not my stuff, not my research, their own. I have nothing to do with any of this. But the barrier to VR treatments, Kim Bullock, a Stanford University researcher, who studies neuropsychiatrics, said that she only learned about VR advancements through her own research. Quote, I found out there was 30 years of evidence that none of us ever heard anything, heard about in training. So, yeah. Bullock is one of several researchers documenting the growing number of trials measuring the effectiveness of VR as a supplementary tool in both diagnosis and treatment of psychotic disorders. But I think it's well beyond. Well, that's her area of specialty. And so the way that I think about medicine is, this is both anecdotal and I'm pretty sure scientific, because if you look at the data, it is. But the anecdote is, when you're a hammer, all you see are nails, and just find out what your doctor's specialty is. And I guarantee you they're treating you around that specialty primarily, right? Like the last doctor that I spoke to was a nutritionist. And so everything was in the rose-colored glasses of nutrition. Another person that I spoke to recently, I said, I think that you're suffering from this. And they went and spoke to somebody, and the person that was riding shotgun with them that was in training at the hospital said, well, this looks exactly like this. And so they went to a specialist, and before they even got into the assessment, the person goes, you are not suffering from this. I don't know why they sent you here. Just kind of blows my mind. So when I read certain papers, I start pulling back layers of how we got there. But every little bit of research stands on the shoulders of giants, and we keep moving forward. So that's what I find more important here. So yes, there is a growing body of research that demonstrates the efficacy of VR treatment, yet Bullock described healthcare providers as a cautious group by nature. We don't get trained in VR, we don't have the ability to try it out, and there's no set standards and best practices. Bullock described this caution rather than costs or logistics as the main barrier to VR treatments. But you don't get standards and best practices until you put something into action. And so I actually regret not pursuing this. But like I said, I didn't know where this technology would have ended up. And it's certainly not as far as I had hoped, VR technology in general. But there have been many people over the 30 years since I did it that have researched this VR, particularly phobia treatment, pain management as well. It's a great environment for somebody to deal with the manifestation of whatever it is that might be ailing them, and using therapy. Like they call it a symptoms room here. In August last year, the museum opened up 4 different symptom experience rooms, which allow visitors to experience simulated psychosis courtesy of VR. But in my 30 years ago, you could embody whatever it is that was ailing you and then eliminate it. And that's kind of the same conclusion that people would come to when you read later on, years and years later, you hear about, if you say a cuss word when you like stub your toe or something like that, it allows you to alleviate the pain more. And that's been researched and verified that actually is true. And so that's kind of what VR does. It allows you to experience it and deal with it right there. And I think that it's a great use of technology. But they say with the aid of goggles and headsets, visitors can experience how it feels to walk through everyday places such as libraries, markets, with hallucinatory voices in their head and visual apparitions flashing before their eyes. Just I think it's this week, I'm trying to get, I have a solution for a problem that exists within ohmTown, which is cross-linking all of the data that we talk about. It's taking like an extraordinary amount of time because it keeps growing. But there has been research done using fMRI technology that now has the resolution that's necessary for us to visualize, using fMRI technology, the hallucinations and visual apparitions that those suffering from psychosis are burdened by. You can actually see it functionally going on in a person's head as they're suffering from it, which can expose future treatments. How do we do this? Maybe deep brain stimulation can facilitate disabling these hallucinations, but that will only come from merging technologies like VR, monitoring it in real time. And that's what they did. They used a method to put a person in an fMRI machine in VR so that they could actually monitor the person going through an induced visual and auditory hallucination, just so that they could see where it all takes place. Pretty fascinating stuff. But when I was doing the research for fMRI technology, the resolution was so abundantly low that it was basically looking at something that was in grayscale, whereas nowadays the magnetic field is so refined that it's high resolution. Basically, it's like 8K, compared to black and white. Anyway, let's keep going. This next article, I thought this was going to be something a little more fun, and so this next article is in ohmTown Daily. This LED mask hides your face behind a creepy pixelated smile, but it's actually a Kickstarter, and it's kind of low res. I didn't know what it was going to be like until I set it all up, because that's how this show goes. What you hear from me is completely vamped, and from the sentient AI from the future. We don't look at these articles in depth. The only thing that we see when we choose it is basically the title and this little bit of information, unless somebody submitted it to us. And then all we get when we actually pull it into ohmTown is the same amount of information. So we don't really go deep into the article until we talk about it here on the show. I've actually heard of this, the Cutty mask, and honestly, I'll talk about it, but I'm not too impressed by this. It's an article over at The Verge, and the title of this is "This LED mask hides your face behind a creepy pixelated smile." It's by Andrew Lazuski. I've pronounced this many times properly the first time. Anyway, the deck statement, it says, for $129, the Cutty Mask 2 will maintain your privacy while still allowing you to expressively communicate with others without revealing your identity. This is the silliest premise for creating a mask like this. And it's a Kickstarter. And it's $129 when you can go to Amazon, and because I've looked for these because I want to do something for a project. These are so limited. It says version 2 appears to be more streamlined and purpose-built as a wearable digital avatar, but it looks like you're wearing ski goggles. When there are technologies out there that can make this thing abundantly more usable, or I should say more configurable and not blocky like this. This is just kind of weird. I don't know. I don't think that I've got it in the next show. Next show after this show is Wanted, which is all about gadgets and gear that I want, and I think others might want. So 3 versions of the Cutty Mask 2 are planned: a cute kawaii option, a cartoony robot, and one called XX's, which features abstract glyphs for eyes. A basic grid of color-changing LEDs could easily replicate all 3 of these designs, but the use of what appears to be segmented displays similar to digital clocks of yesteryear will necessitate consumers having to make a choice. So this is $129 for this. And I just don't get it. Seriously, if you'd rather wait until after the Kickstarter is over, the full retail pricing will be closer to $200. That's out of your mind. And you can get a better version of it from Amazon, and they say for $36, but I don't remember the pricing when I went looking for it. This just didn't make much sense, but I figured I'd talk about it because I'm looking for a solution that allows me to do something like this, but in much higher resolution and controllability. We'll see if I actually make it happen. And then the next article is over in Reality Hacker. Mixed reality racer Trackcraft is now fully playable in VR. And I'm wondering if this was created in Unreal Engine, because pretty much anything in Unreal Engine can now be pulled into VR with a mod. Former mixed reality exclusive Trackcraft now includes an immersive VR mode, and it's heading to the main Quest store in August. Following last year's early launch, Trackcraft from Brains Gamify received a major update that adds mixed reality and VR toggles to seamlessly switch between both modes. Today's update also includes 2 new camera perspectives, a cockpit view and a third-person view that follows your car. And the studio states that it also introduced a significant visual upgrade. The article is over at uploadvr.com. Henry Stockdale is the author, and they've got a video here of it. So I'm just gonna kind of send you all over to that, because I cannot do it justice. Basically, you're on a racetrack that doesn't have any sides. You can race around on it now in VR mode, which I think is spectacular. I love this kind of stuff. It says Trackcraft is available now in early access on Quest App Lab, and it's also out on Pico, which is what I use. I use the Pico 4s. As for future plans, Trackcraft will move from App Lab to the full Quest store upon full release at the end of August. This upcoming update will include 2 new track packs, a new garage for car customization, and real-time multiplayer that uses a shared space with avatars. Come full release, Trackcraft will also receive a price increase from $10.49 to $20, which would be worth it if it was on other platforms. Please stop making these things only for like the Quest. Make it PC VR and port it over to Quest and Pico and everything else. Why limit yourself? Unless you're being paid by Meta, you should distribute your stuff everywhere. And if you can run it on the Quest, if you can run it on the Pico, then you can certainly make it possible to play on PC VR, because that's what I use my Picos for. I very rarely play anything straight out of the Pico store. If anything, I use the software that allows me to gain access to the PC, and that's it. So anyway, you race around on these tracks, and it's like Trackmania, but they call it Trackcraft, but it's a lot like Trackmania. Race upside down in VR, do all kinds of stuff, stunt driving. It's a lot of fun. So go and check it out. And that's it for Reality Hacker for June 15th, 2024. So thanks for coming and hanging out. I'm going to turn on my VR set and pull us all the way back to Main Street. Reality Hacker, it's right here under Creative and Maker, Reality Hacker. You click the little button and it'll update all of the articles that are in this channel. Ta-da! And that's it, folks. That's it. I'm out. So I'm going to reset, and yeah, we're running a little bit further behind than I want to, but that's okay. We will reset, and Wanted will start in about 15 minutes. It takes time to reset everything, but see you then.